All right, so in this clip, let's take a look at actually making use of that texture that we created. Let's first take a look at using it here inside of Maya. So if you take a look at where we kind of left off here, if I turn off the grid over here, you'll see that the texture at the moment is again based on the footage. It is shifting around constantly. It's also very important that this model actually doesn't move. If I go ahead and shift the model here, you can see the texture will actually swim right through it. And that's because the texture is being projected from our camera, which is right over there right now. So we want to replace this with something that'll always stay put, as well as always show us the data we need to see and not have it shift over time either. So let's go ahead and grab the model, jump into our attribute editor, and I'm going to go over to the shader right over here. I'm just going to blow away the color here. I'll just right click and break that connection. And instead, choose a file, and let's go ahead and add in that image that we just made, which I saved as Nuke Face Merged. We'll go ahead and open that up, and that's about it. You can see that now we have that texture on the face. It shows up pretty well. I mean, a little bit of strange shadow here and there, but we now no longer have to worry about that texture shifting as we go ahead and scrub the footage. We also don't have to worry about it shifting as I move or change the model's position. So it also is going to act as a great piece of reference now. I don't have to constantly look to the footage to see, if I want a scar running from the corner of his eye to see where that exactly starts. I can see exactly here. And you can see it still lines up extremely well with our footage. If we jump over to the camera, let me actually go ahead and remove some of that overscan. Give ourselves a little bit more space. I'll also remove my outliner. Just grab the camera there. Let's go ahead and jump down here to our display options. I'll turn off pan zoom, and we'll go ahead and pull the overscan back out over there. Okay, so if we go ahead and hit play, let's go ahead and hide our grid. You can see it's kind of creepy. Almost looks like he's wearing a mask of his own face, human skin mask. That's not a horror movie at all. And you can see it's matching extremely well. And if we were to go ahead and shut off that footage, let's go ahead and go back to the attribute editor and just set this to none. You can also see that it works this way as well. So now we have the perfect reference object here inside of Maya. It shows us the texture, it has the proper movement, it has also the proper shape and fit. So any prosthetics we build or design any prosthetics that maybe cut away at him, we now can work off of this object here. So let's go ahead and now jump into Nuke and do the same thing there. Rather than using that project 3D node, let's just go ahead and throw this texture onto there. So let's go ahead and jump into Nuke. All right, so now we're back in Nuke. Let's go ahead and get rid of this projection texture. Let me jump into the 3D view and replace it just with our new texture. So I'm going to go ahead and also delete out these right nodes. We don't really need those anymore. For the rendering, I can also go ahead and switch this back to render camera. And we can plug our background back in as well. And let's see, we'll delete the project 3D node. We don't need that anymore. So, and I'll also disconnect the texture from the footage there. So let's go ahead and load in that new image. I'm just going to get a read node here. All right, and there's my Nuke face merged. Go ahead and open that up, and we'll just plug that right in. And let's take a look at that in the 3D view. Just like in Maya, you can see it does fit pretty well. Oops. See, now as we change the camera, it no longer scrolls. And you can see that just the way it looked in Maya, when we actually do a scanline render, it does stick pretty well. So that's pretty much it. We've now covered everything that we've planned on covering. So this is, again, a pipeline that you can take, and it's just one of many, to track the human face. And of course, it only works in certain scenarios. If you have a character running and ducking and jumping under things and making wild expressions, then this doesn't necessarily work. It's kind of a best case scenario, but you can also use little bits and pieces of what you've learned here in a lot of different cases. And that's usually what I do. Even a few tracking markers can kind of take us a long way, and we can fill in the rest with kind of different tricks, especially the types we used here. Now, for this one in particular, I would probably spend probably a little bit more time going there, be a little more meticulous, trying to get it to have the shape fit just a little bit better. But you could see for the most part, we've done pretty well. So let's still kind of talk a bit about, though, what we've covered in this module. So let's see what we've covered in this module. We started by setting up our Project 3D node inside of Nuke. That way, just as we did in Maya, we could project our footage directly onto the 3D face model. After that, we took a look at setting up the scanline renderer inside of Nuke to actually render to the UVs of the model as opposed to rendering out of a camera view. We then took a look at reformatting those renders from being in the traditional 1920 1080 format the rest of our project has been in to a more square UV format, and we used the reformat node for that with the distort setup. After that, we took a look at taking those multiple renders that we took out and merging them together in Photoshop to create a texture for the face. And then finally, we took a look at taking that face texture and applying it to both the model inside of Nuke and in Maya. Now, that completes this module, and it also completes the entire course. So again, I hope that this information will be useful to you, and I hope you can kind of take this information to, for a lot of different applications, not just necessarily a still moving face, but this can be applied to a variety of different objects and limbs and creatures and, really anything that needs to be tracked and have a reference object created of it inside of our 3D software. So I hope you've enjoyed the course, and I look forward to seeing you in some of my future courses.